From analog.
Hi, Jim. You've a great signal up here. You're 5.9 plus.
You're digital.
We are everywhere you want to be. This is the CQ Blind Hams Podcast.
Welcome to the monthly Blind Hams Tech Zoom. I'm Steve, WB2KTV. I'm in New York City, Grid Square, Fox November. What is my grid square? Fox November 30 Alpha Romeo. If you want to come and visit, the door is always open. We meet every month at this time, second Thursday of the month at 8 p.m. Eastern local time. That's, of course, going to change because this is March, just before we go to daylight saving time. In April, of course, everything goes out the window. It's still 8 p.m. local time, but it will be 0 hours UTC. But by then, UTC will have changed, so it'll be 1 in the morning, British summertime. So you'll work it out wherever it is that you are, wherever it is that you live. We get together at this time every month to have an informal or sometimes formal discussion about equipment, techniques, tips, tricks in the blindness community that make it easier for us to do what we do, which is get on the air and ride you as much as we can. This month we have both a recorded presenter and a live presenter, and they're the same person. That's Gena M0EBP, who consented to stay up real late tonight and be with us live as well as on recording. And we'll turn it over to you in just a minute, but before we do, I want to introduce the other members of the Blind Hams Tech Zoom team. Our illustrious host is Angelo N2DYN. A few words for your fans, Angelo?
Oh, just hope everybody enjoys it. Gena's really good at this.
Okay. Julian, you're in Florida. You fooled me last night when you checked into my net during the Eastern time section. How are things? How are things with you? And how are things back home with all the water coming down?
Well, things back home, yeah. Apparently now they're preparing for a big flooding event because the next series of storms are going to be a little warmer in nature, coming out of the tropics as opposed to the Arctic. So now all that snow that fell in all those places that don't normally get it is about to melt and come down the mountains. And thankfully, I'm not there to have anything to do with it because I'm down here in beautiful, warm Southwest Florida. And
the LA River may once again have water in it. You never know. That's N1CA. Let's go to Robert and NC5R.
Good evening, Steve, and everybody on the Tech Zoom. Welcome. It's nice to be here tonight. I'm looking forward to this presentation from Gena, and I'm going to sit back and listen. So back to you, Steve.
And we have Joel, W0CAS. Joel, now that your audio's working, give us a few.
Well, thanks everybody, and thank you again, Gena, for bailing us out and staying up late to give this wonderful presentation. Sorry guys for getting us a late start because I've been messing with WSJTX for about 2 weeks and I've got my audio drivers messed up. And Zoom thought I was on USB audio codec 6, which that wasn't the one. I've been sitting there yelling at my microphone. So back to you, Steve.
Okay, thanks for that. And we have several guests online. I'm just going to remind you all, if you would please, to remain muted during the presentation. The presentation tonight is on using HamLib on the computer, namely a Windows computer, to control a radio. Gena has a podcast of which this is the third part. The podcast is entitled, What is an Accessible Radio? This part deals with HamLib, working with your radio of choice, and there are many of them that HamLib supports, and you can control the radio with HamLib quite nicely. And if I ever wanted to get back on HF after hearing what you're about to hear, it makes me really want to do it, but I live in an apartment and it's not possible. But maybe someday, maybe in my next life. I'm going to play Gena's recording, after which I will turn it over to her with any additional things that she might like to talk about that didn't come up in the recording, and then we'll take open discussion, Q&A, etc. So without any further ado, this is part 3 of What is an Accessible Radio from Regina Joyce, M0EBP.
Hello everyone, this is Mike Zero Echo Bravo Papa with another efficient brief podcast. This is to supplement the blog that I wrote on active elements, listing what is needed to be undertaken to get HamLib working with any of the supported radios. I'm going to work through that post and possibly a little bit more. To get started, we need to run a command prompt. And to do this, I'm going to press Windows R.
Run dialog, type the name of a program, folder, document or internet resource, and Windows will open it for you. Open. Combo box collapsed. Edit Alt plus O selected CMD.
And because I used the command prompt previously, it remembers my last command, which was CMD. So I'll just press enter.
C. Windows System 32 CMD.exe Terminal C. Users M0EBP greater.
As you can hear there, it reads the current working directory, which is the username, which is my call sign. Now, cmd.exe, which is the program we're running here, has a problem with its own backslashes. So we have to navigate to a path step by step, which is a bit of a nuisance, but this is what we need to do. We type cd for change directory,
cd
space, and we want to get to the root directory, so we can type c backslash
C greater.
So I'm going to type cd
space
pro,
pro,
and then press the tab key to autocomplete.
C greater cd program files.
Now, had my install went into the program files x86 directory, I would need to amend this path by hitting backspace over a quotation mark that is there, which is used because program files has a space in it. So if autocomplete hadn't put it in quotation marks, then it wouldn't make sense to the computer. So you'd backspace over the quotation mark, press space and left parenthesis, and then tab to autocomplete, then press enter. But I'm going to press enter here.
C program files greater.
And the response is that I'm in that directory. I want to go to HamLib, so I'm going to type cd space HA, and I can press tab.
HamLib W64 4.5.
I'm going to press enter.
C program files HamLib W64 4.5 greater.
We need to be in the bin directory where the binaries are stored. So I'm going to do cd bin.
cd space bin
and press enter.
C program files HamLib W64 4.5 bin greater.
Now we are ready to start building our command line. As I explain in the Active Elements blog, we need to provide 3 bits of information. We need to provide the model number as known by HamLib, the COM port to which the radio is connected, and the baud rate. I'll show you how to do that now. HamLib supports a huge number of radios, and all this command structure applies to all of them. And so we need to know the model number that HamLib refers to. In this case, the Yaesu FT991A. And to get all the radios HamLib supports, you type rig control or RIGCTL -L.
RIGCTL
space, and such arguments or switches are defined by a dash and then L to list.
L.
Now I'm not going to list all the radios because it would be crazy to try and find the Yaesu one amongst all the many radios supported. So we press the space bar, so this is rig control space -L space vertical bar, or pipe symbol is called,
bar,
and NVDA just says bar space. And we're going to pipe the output of list to find,
FIND,
and then the space. Now we need to put our string that we want to find in quotation marks. Going to put quote 991 and quote. If you wanted to specify the letters, they would need to be in uppercase and separated from the numbers, typically with a dash. Press enter.
1035 Yaesu foot 991 20,221,025.13 stable rig model foot 991. C. Program files HamLib.
For each radio there is 2 lines of output. The very first bit of information is that model number, which in this case was 1035. Now we have part 1 for our command line. I'm going to type that on the command line now. We type rig control
RIGCTL space
dash because we're putting in a switch, and this is for the model, so it's M for Mike,
M space
or M for model, 1035 space, and the next switch
dash,
an R for radio, or
space
Romeo, and a space. And on this computer the radio is connected to COM1 because I've moved the port assignment to COM1.
COM1 space.
But obviously your machine's going to be different. So I type COM1 space, and then the final bit of information is the baud rate, and that's defined by the switch -S.
-S space.
When you get started, you might not know what the baud rate is. So I'm going to deliberately put the wrong baud rate in, which is a valid baud rate, just so that you can hear how you know that you haven't yet got it right. The default, if someone's working with the Yaesu 991A and my FT81A, has the same baud rate by default, which is 4800. So I'm going to put that in.
4800.
And just listen how long things take to happen. I've pressed enter, and we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting.
Rig command.
So that was quite long. Now I'm going to press F to request the frequency. This is a lowercase f. And press enter. And it's going to time out. It's just sitting there. This is the typical behavior that the baud rate is wrong. It does come up with a load of errors eventually, and I'm going to press Q and enter to come out, and I think it's going to have to display the errors before.
Get rig error equals read string generic timed out 3 point.
There we go, it was saying that it timed out, and
rig command Q C Program files HamLib W64.
So I muted that. That is what happens whilst you're guessing what the baud rate is. I'm going to show you a way to look up what the baud rate might be for your radio, because you don't want to be trying every baud rate that's available for each radio, especially when they only support 3 or 4 baud rates. As with Unix, Windows offers a history buffer. So to get the command that I've typed in, I don't have to type it again, I can up arrow.
C. Program files HamLib W64 4.5 bin greater Richter M1035 RCOM 1S4800. C. Program files HamLib.
Now all I need to do is backspace over 4800, which is the wrong baud rate,
0084,
and type in the correct one, which is
38400.
And now note how quick the command prompt and responses are.
Rig command.
See how quick that was. I'll press F so we can see what the current frequency. Let me just turn the radio up just so that you can hear when I change frequency. You'll hear, I can't remember what band I left it on. So lowercase f, and enter.
Frequency 7074210. Rig command.
And we're on 40 meters. So to change the frequency within rig control, you do an uppercase F.
F. Space.
Now what might vary from radio to radio is the number of digits you need to type for the frequency. As the 991 has UHF and VHF, it requires 3 digits for megahertz, 3 digits for kilohertz, and 3 digits for hertz. So in total you need to put 9 digits in. Let's go to 80 meters. So 003.
003.
What should we do? 775?
775.
And then 000.
000.
And listen to the radio. And I press enter.
Rig command.
That didn't sound very different, did it really? But I'll press the lowercase f and just see what it says.
F. Frequency 3775000. Rig command.
Let me just turn the radio back down because we don't want that noise all the time. There we go. To see what mode the radio is in, we can do lowercase m.
M. Mode LSB. Passband 2400. Rig command.
You see the mode is always matched with the passband, and you can change those with the capital M command. Note if you're changing to 20 meters and beyond, where you need to change to USB, you will need to change the mode manually. Just because you've changed the frequency, the mode will not follow. You will need to issue the capital F and then the capital M command. I'm going to press Q to quit and press enter.
Q. C. Program files have.
And I'll mute that. Now remember I said that there's a way of checking what the possible baud rates might be. They're in a file that it calls a dump caps. It's a dump of the capabilities of each radio. So we can use the find command, as I did for the model, to use the word serial as the search, and it will tell you the baud rates of that particular radio. But I'm going to just demonstrate, because I've already demonstrated the find command, how to save all that output into a text file. Now because we've navigated to program files directory, you probably won't have privileges to write into that directory. So I'm going to have to write to a place where I, as a normal user, can actually write to. So let's just show you the command to get the capabilities dump. So it's rig control, obviously.
R-I-G-C-T-L space.
And it's -M
space.
And it's 1035.
1035.
So we're telling rig control we want something regarding the Yaesu FT991 and 991A.
Space.
And we simply put the switch dash, then U for uniform.
U.
Now, as I said, we want to copy this to a file, so we do a space. And we do a greater than, which is a directional symbol.
Greater.
And we'll go to D colon backslash. And I'll call it 991A dump.
991 DUMP.
And name it with .txt so that when I press enter on it, it will open Notepad.
.txt.
And I press enter.
C. Program files have.
It responded with nothing, it just read the prompt again. I'll just demonstrate now finding that file and opening it up. And we can read the serial port because it's pretty near the top of the document. So we just type exit
EXIT
and press enter. I'll do Windows E for Windows Explorer.
File Explorer. This PC. Items view list. Folders grouping expanded. Desktop not.
And I'm going to cursor down to my D drive.
Picture, video, Windows, data, D. Items view list. $recycle.
And if I press the
991 dump.txt 10 of 12.
And there's the one we've just created. And I'll just press enter on that.
991 dump.txt notepad. Text editor document caps dump for model 1035.
There we go. So it said it was the caps dump for model and it gave the model number, and I'll just cursor down.
Model name, foot 991. MFG name, backend rig type, PTT, DC, port type, serial, port type, RS232. Serial speed, 4800.38,400 baud, 8N2CTS/RTS.
That was the slowest speed that it supports up to its fastest. So I demonstrated 4800, which was the default, which is the slowest. And I've changed it to 38400, which is the fastest. So that is HamLib. Hopefully that's enough to get you started. So that's all from me, from Mike 0, Echo Bravo Papa.
Thank you very, very much, Gena. A couple of notes and a couple of comments. Number one, you'll notice in the text reading of the dump file and a couple other places where it mentioned FT991, thanks to NVDA, it said foot 991. So that may be a little confusing to some, but that's why it did that. And the second thing was, Gena didn't mention this, but anybody who's worked with COM ports on the PC, even once, would probably have recognized when it said 8N1, CTS, RTS, and all of that. That brings me back to the 80s and hooking up Hayes modems, where you had to know how many data bits, what the parity was, and how many stop bits. So 8N1 meant 8 bits, normal parity, 1 stop bit. And if I remember correctly, Gena, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think I said 8N1, it might have said 8N2. So if you find that you have your speed set correctly and everything else is right, and it still doesn't work, you may have to mess around with your COM port setting and make sure that the number of data bits, parity, and stop bits are correct. That having been said, I will make one comment. This is about Windows in general that has annoyed me just forever. Why they haven't put this in Windows up to this point, I don't know. All of that typing and finding the directory that Gena did in the beginning could be eliminated if Windows would allow you to open a directory in a file, in a program, but it doesn't. It will only allow you to open a file in a program. What I mean by that is you can arrow down to any file, and on the context menu or the file menu, you will find a selection called Open With, but not for a directory. You can't do that. They should allow that, and what they should allow is for you to open a directory in CMD. That would eliminate all that fumfering around and needless typing and trying to find your way around, which is tedious and, in my humble opinion, an egregious oversight. Microsoft, are you listening? Okay, that's it for me. I'm going to turn this over to Gena with for any additional comments, and then I'm going to give her control of the meeting if she'd like to take questions from anybody. When she does, just unmute yourself and ask your question. I would recommend that if you have a question, you raise your hand on the computer. That would be Command Y on a Mac or Alt Y in Windows. On the phone, it's a little hard to find, but it's on the bottom. Thankfully, Zoom has put the raise hand button on the main meeting window. It didn't used to be. You used to have to go fishing for it. But now it's on the main window toward the bottom of the screen. So, Gena, unmute, and the floor is yours for any closing comments, and then we'll go for questions and Q&A and like that.
Okay. Yes. So thanks for filling out the COM port stuff. I did record that, but then because my brief, so to speak, to myself, the limits I've set myself, I don't want a podcast going over 20 minutes because it's really hard for people, if they want to do something, to trawl through a podcast that's an hour long.
Of course.
And I just thought that was superfluous information, because hopefully, the defaults within HamLib are okay. It's just that baud rate which may vary, but they tend to set the default for HamLib at the lowest baud rate. Well, that's what the developers told me on the developer list. So, and you're so right. It's so frustrating with navigating to a directory when an install doesn't set the path variable. Then you have to navigate to the directory to activate the executable. However, my next part is writing a batch file. So just from the desktop, you can just hit enter on it, and it loads the program and your rig command prompt. And most people show changing the frequency of a radio and the mode, because they're pretty simple ones. CTCSS is a relatively simple command, but so should commands like changing VFO. That is really overkill. You have to type in capital letters, capital V, then VFO, then a space, then VFO again, then followed by, if you want to switch to VFOA or VFOB, or MEM, MEM, if you want to go to the memories, if the radio supports that. I wanted to also stress that HamLib obviously works from the back end, And it much depends on what the manufacturer of that particular radio enables or designs into that particular radio design. And that is why the dump of capabilities is very important, so that you can see what you can control of that particular radio within HamLib. And it's not a restriction of HamLib, it's the restriction of what the manufacturers enabled. So for example, my FT818 has a very basic command set. There's quite a few things that you cannot do with HamLib simply because the support isn't there at the back end. But the 991A is obviously an SDR type HF and UHF VHF radio, and there's a lot more commands. But there's still things that are difficult to do, and it's not always the case that there's a physical button on the front of the radio that will do that as well. So, there's always going to be gotchas, and I haven't found them yet because my experience of using HF radios and setting DSP levels and that sort of thing are I'm not the sharpest tool in the box as far as radios are concerned. I'm more of a computer geek than a radio geek, really. HamLib is actively being developed, although if anyone's a member of the HamLib development list will see that Michael Black, who has been doing a lot of the development, has announced that he has had some serious health issues and is having to step back. But there's several people who have stepped forward to step in and continually maintain the development of HamLib. So I think Angelo pointed out that it's available on Linux, and that is how I intend to go out with my FT818 and a Raspberry Pi, because it's low on power consumption and very small and easy to carry, and drive my FT818 QRP setup with a Raspberry Pi. It's also available on the Mac. And because I had problems with my Windows machine because I hadn't booted up for a few days, I had some updates to do, and I thought, oh no, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate anything. So I've been and got the my Mac down as well, my MacBook Air, and luckily I've got HamLib installed on that, so I can demonstrate on that too. But the Windows machine has come up now. So
they finally gave it back to you.
Yeah.
Now, you say you have this installed on your Mac. I take it runs in the terminal window under the Linux portion?
Yes.
Okay,
well,
good to know.
It's it is on the console, and there's no GUI part to it. It is a command line driven program. And that's why I love it, really, because I just prefer that than any GUI program, really. So
yeah, a lot of people like Macs just for that reason. You get the graphic user interface for what you need, and you get the terminal and basically a Linux prompt for everything else.
That's right. Yeah. I think they're all the build from source, which is what I do on my Mac Mini. I did a line count because the radios supported are dumped into a file, and there's one radio per line, and it's 277 at the moment radios.
Wow.
That is a mixture, though, of base stations, mobiles and handhelds. Even the Kenwood THD74 is supported by HamLib. I'm not sure what you can do because I haven't looked at the dump of caps for it. But there's also some scanners in there. When people have said, how do you use the Uniden blah, blah, blah. I've looked, but HamLib, I don't think there's any Uniden scanners supported by HamLib, which is a shame because I know people are really looking forward to, having a really accessible scanner. But it's quite a range. Angelo and I have sort of discussed the ZGU radios that seem to be coming out cheap, SDRs, QRP radios. There's support within HamLib for the ZGU X6100. And well, basically because its command set is the same as the ICOM's IC7000, but they have actually now branched it into its own set of code for that radio. So it's it's great if Kenwood and the other manufacturers can keep producing the voice chips and stuff, but HamLib steps in where where on so many other radios. So if Kenwood don't release a new radio with a speech board, and the 590 and stuff drop out, HamLib could be our only choice of accessibility in the future. I hope not, but who knows?
Well, it's very, very well done, very well presented and explained, and I hope Mr. Black recovers from his health issues. I wish him the very best, of course, and I thank virtually, of course, all those who have stepped in to keep the project going. One of the things these kind of projects suffer from is there's somebody doing most of the work, or there's somebody heading the project, something happens to them, they fall ill, they get a job, they go through a midlife crisis, whatever it might be, and the project grinds to a halt. We've seen this already in things like OpenRTX, and wonderful guy that he is, Joe Stevens' not open, but accessible GD77 project through no fault of his own. He's got a life, he's got things to do, and he's the main person behind that project, and when those other things come up, the Open GD77 project gets put on hold. And that's not to say anything against any of the people that run into these things, but it happens so frequently, and it's so great to hear that in HamLib's case, there are people who are stepping up and taking it on and moving it forward. I imagine, in the next few months we'll probably see more radios. A comment on the Uniden radios, they will probably come sooner rather than later. That communications protocol is out in the wild. Otherwise, there wouldn't be programs like ProScan and ARC536, because they use those protocols to talk to these Uniden radios. So there are people that know how to do it. Somebody's just got to get that into HamLib's hands, and it will come. Okay, Gena, I'd like to thank you very much for staying up late. It's got to be 1:30, 1:45 where you are, and we don't want to keep you for very long. But if anybody has a question for her that wasn't covered in either the previous presentation or what she just said, please unmute and talk to us.
Well, I got a question for Gena, Steve, if you don't mind.
That's quite all right. That's Joel, W0CAS. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Jenny, you mentioned it's all command line. Are there any talks of developing a GUI for HamLib, or is it always going to be a command line program only? Because I'm a GUI guy. I don't do command lines. So what do you think?
Okay, so what I haven't explained is that rig control is a test program, because the HamLib libraries, which is the whole package, is designed for developers. So there's lots of developers who use HamLib libraries as their backend, and they develop a GUI over the top of them. And rig control as a utility is for them to check that they've got their commands right. So, when they're debugging their software, they can see if it's not working, because of the way they've implemented the commands to rig control, or it's rig control failing with that particular radio. And that's why it will always be a command line. But there are developers who have developed, like Chirp, I believe, uses the HamLib libraries, and all sorts of software hobbyists who like to twiddle with software development. They don't have to work out all the commands to the radios they want to support. They can just communicate with the HamLib libraries. I should also say that it can be used as a remote control thing by using a slightly different program, Rig Control D, which is a daemon, so that you can control your radio in the same way as Chris has been telling us about Win for Icon, Win for Yaesu, and Win for Elecraft. I don't know if those applications use the HamLib libraries or not, but it would save a developer a lot of the hard work of writing the protocols that communicate with each radio.
Very good. And I just want to let everybody know that on the show notes of the podcast and on the YouTube channel, we're going to put a link to Gena's blog post where she gives some instructions and also gives a link to the GitHub page to be able to download the software.
Yeah, lots of people struggle with screen readers, accessing software on GitHub pages. So I've given some tips of, how to use the screen reader and jump, more or less quickly and more or less immediately to the download link of whatever the latest version is at the time of writing, until they change the format of the GitHub pages. But I think that, they've been going for some time, and I think the layout's always going to be of that sort of structure. And just hopefully people will find those tips useful. And it's a series that I'm doing on the Active Elements blog, and the next one will be writing a batch file to simplify the process and look at some more of the commands and exploring for example, the signal meter, the signal strength, that will vary in its output depending what is sent down from the back end. And with Yaesu on this particular radio, it is 0 to 255. So it's really, really hard to work out the signal strength from those sort of, what to us appear random numbers. But, there are lots of negatives not negatives, but downfalls to using HamLib. But if it gives you access to a radio that of a particular brand that you want to use, then it's a means to an end, isn't it? But it's no panacea.
I could definitely see some handy scripting on the Linux side to make an interface that would act like a GUI, kind of what you see when you log into your Shari node, where it's not really a GUI, but it acts like one. And you can
like the ncurses libraries and things that just make simple menu systems. I
could definitely see some possibilities for that on the Linux side, where you pick a thing that you want, and it gets it, reads it, and then presents it to you on screen where you would expect to see it. So it looks like it acts like a GUI, but it really isn't one.
Mm.
Anybody else got anything for Gena?
I'd just make one quick comment, Steve.
That's Robert on C5R. Go ahead, sir.
Just wanted to say that I used an ICOM back in the 1990s, a 746 with my computer because it was really the only way to get decent access to the radio. It's really fun to hear about this. And like you, Steve, it kind of took me back a little bit to the old days. But it's really fun to know that one can, with a little effort on the computer, make a radio stand up and dance if you want it to. So it's really, thank you for doing this, Gina. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed hearing about it. Back to you, Steve. That's all I got.
I second that emotion 100%. And like I said in the beginning, it makes me very jealous for all you people that can have these radios. I miss HF even more. Anybody else with a comment or a question? Going once? Going twice? Nobody else? All right, I think we should let Gina go to bed. It's got to be.
I don't feel tired. I drank too much McDonald's coffee. That's what it was.
That'll do it to you. If it won't keep you up, at least it'll keep you running back and forth to the you-know-where.
If I could just comment on Robert mentioning an ICOM radio. I think the initial start of HamLib libraries, I'm pretty certain it's very much the same. There was a Linux console program called ICOM, which is what I used because my first radio with my partner Mike was a 706 Mark II. And I found this Linux command line thing, and the command structure is very much the same. So I'm not sure if HamLib was sort of spawned from that further development. I believe there was one called Yaesu, but I never had a Yaesu radio at that time. But yes, it does take you back.
That it does. Okay, so if there are no more questions or comments, I'm going to say that concludes this edition of the monthly Blind Ham's Tech Zoom. I'd like to thank all the people who joined and all the people out there who listen on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, or download the podcast from blindhams.com. For the Blind Ham Tech Zoom team, this is, and always will be, Steve, WB2KTV. 7-3, everybody.
7-3.
See you on the radio.
Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and visit www.blindhams.com.